In our last meeting, we discovered that Hermes, or Mercury, is the key, the messenger, the only one that can weave his magic between all the others. We are setting a foundation, building the staff of Hermes. In myth and legend, and in reality in the physical, power, or the life source, emanates from the centre, from the Mese. What is the Mese? I was first introduced to this term by Stephanie McPeterson. Check her channel out for a thorough education on the Mese. All things harmonic, Francis Bacon and much more. A Mese is the median, the centre. In this presentation with Ryan, we discover some other fascinating things about the Mese and about some measurements from the King's Chamber to the Equator. A few months back, I was watching Howard Crowhurst on the megalithic yard. I didn't know much about the megalithic yard, so I watched his presentation. He tells the story of a friend casually suggesting to him to measure from the King's Chamber to the Equator. For a long time, and including in the Mercator projection map, the centre of the Earth mass, or rather the centre of the land mass, was said to be Giza. Getting towards the end of Howard's video, he shows us the measurement from the King's Chamber to the Equator. First he gives us the measurement in metres, and then shows the conversion to megalithic yards. This was at about midday one day when I was watching this, so I took a few screenshots and I saved it for later. But now I want to share with you what happened next. Later on, that very same day, an innocent idea popped into my head. Something seemingly completely unrelated. This little whisper I got was to do the sum and the multiple of the Gematria of my name. The Gematria itself is not the important issue here, but what came from me checking this out. Dane equals 144, Abraham equals 264, Quirk equals 456. The sum of the name equals 36. The multiple of the name equals 92,160. Multiply them together, we get 3,317,760. So if you remember, earlier that day, watching about the megalithic yard, I'd seen that number that day and thought to myself, I've seen this number today. And sure enough, I scroll back through the day's savings, and there it is. But just when I think it's given up all its secrets, I remember this is all about harmonics, and that these are the notes of D. So let's go over what we covered here in this interview with the notes of D. And the obvious significance the ancients placed on the note of D, and the clear depiction of the importance of the Mese. So to recap on what was found by watching Howard's video, is that taking the first note of D at 9 Hz and taking the last note of D at 36,864 Hz, we get the measurement from the King's Chamber to the Equator. Then of course, if we move towards the centre, 18 Hz by 18,432 Hz, we get the same answer. We continue this process until we get to the Mese of D. So D at 576 Hz by d at 576 Hz equals the distance from the King's chamber to the equator. That is to say that the Mese of d times the Mese of d equals the Mese of the landmass to the Mese of Earth, distance 3,317,760 metres. Some of you keen observers might have already noticed something in this scale and something that we saw earlier to do with the megalithic yard. It's been argued for a long time that there's no connection between the mile and the metre, and especially to the megalithic yard and so on. But as you can see here, the megalithic yard at 829442 and dividing that into the metres 3,317,760, we get 4 million megalithic yards. But if you noticed, in the column of E in the music scale, we find the megalithic yard. Many more people now are becoming aware of the fine structure constant and the fine structure angle, a number they say physicists put up on their door and worry about. Well, as Alan Green shows in his video, that in the King's chamber, 137.5 is found by stacking the sarcophagus. I'll let Alan do the explaining, but while we're in the King's chamber, let's not forget to mention the resonant frequency of the King's chamber, 117 Hz, or 117 days, the synodic period of Mercury. Getting back to the fine structure constant and the fine structure angle, and the Mese of d that we saw earlier, 137.5 or 137 is like a growth rate. It's many things to do with the mechanics of reality. But if we take 137.5 times the note of d at 576 Hz, we get the diameter of Earth in miles. They say that man is the measure of all things, and as I've previously stated in other videos, you are the map. Before we go any further, if you think that these are just numbers like I did, then hang with us, because the following videos are going to show that this whole debate about 432 Hz versus 440 Hz was never an arbitrary thing. To give you a quick example and to whet your appetite, the eclipse in 2024, April 8th, is exactly 432 months until the Great Conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in 2060. The sheer number now of how many of these there are, from 144 days to 432 to 864, and all the Pythagorean notes in the music scale that correlate directly to not only the sizes and the distances of the planets, but their synodic periods, their orbital periods, and geometry, the quadrivium as it's called. The disciplines that cover astronomy, harmony, geometry, and some very simple, foundational mathematics. Many around the world are calling reality a scripted reality, a simulation, but in truth, it's a harmonic reality. And this will be played out and shown throughout this whole series, as we saw for our friend Mercury, and why he's called the messenger. Next we're going to get into Saturn, and why he's called Kronos, why he's the ruler of time. Man is remembering an embedded, natural harmonic system that rules and runs all of the natural mechanics of reality.